Today, we are going to learn a lot about inflation. Let's welcome Happy Consultant again.
Let's look at how inflation changes the way people think. Here is a newlywed couple. They just got married and are looking for a house for their new home.
Let's assume this couple has 200 million won. They borrow 100 million to buy a 300 million won apartment. So they have 300 million in assets and 100 million loan, making the debt to asset ratio 30.
However, if inflation causes the house price to rise to 1 billion won, Happy now has 1 billion won in assets and 100 million won in debt, so the debt to asset ratio is 10%. So, what would Happy think? He made a 700 million won profit, and his debt ratio dropped from 30% to 10%, so he would feel like a rich person. Wouldn't he start spending that money elsewhere? Now, let's consider the opposite case. What if Happy's assets shrink due to deflation? Remember, Happy has 300 million won in assets and a 100 million won loan. But let's assume the economy crashes suddenly and the apartment price drops to 150 million won. What would happen then? Happy now has a net worth of 150 million won with 100 million won in debt. In conclusion, his debt ratio went from 30% to 66%. Actually, his net worth has become almost zero. So, Happy will have no money left to spend and will start trying very hard to save money again. He will cut back on spending and avoid buying luxury items. This means money will stop moving around and the economy will become difficult again. This is the deflation that Japan has experienced over the past 20 to 30 years.
But wait, is inflation good and deflation is bad?
Yes, inflation itself is good for the economy and brings energy, but it can also have many side effects. Let's look at Happy's example again. Happy's apartment, which he bought for 300 million won, is now worth 1 billion won. Wouldn't people who couldn't buy one feel unhappy? Also, Happy's colleagues are very likely to feel wouldn't Happy's colleagues try to take out even bigger loans to buy real estate, even if it's late? Then, real estate prices would skyrocket. And wouldn't other people take out even bigger loans to jump into that rising market? If prices keep rising like that, household debt will likely increase. Naturally, debt will rise, and the amount you have to pay in interest will also go up. When you spend most of your salary on paying off loans, you have less money left for yourself. With high asset prices, you end up paying a lot of interest. This hurts the economy and can lead to a recession. If asset prices crash, you could be stuck with debt you can never pay back. Even if the debt ratio 5% is the same. Owing 500 million is a much heavier burden than owing 150 million, making it much harder to recover from a crash. What if Happy's assets increase suddenly?
Wait, my apartment is worth 2 billion now? Why am I even working?
Happy's co-workers look at his 1.7 billion profit and lose the desire to work. He made in just 5 years what they couldn't save in a lifetime. It is discouraging to see that their lifetime wages cannot match his 5 years of investment success. His same goes for investing. When you see Happy make 1 billion from stocks like Hynix and Samsung, you look at your own 3 million salary and wonder, when will I ever be able to save that much? Ideally, inflation should rise slowly. However, when it hits suddenly and hard, many people suffer. The problem is that inflation rarely happens slowly. It usually comes as a sudden shock. That's why studying economics is essential if you don't want to feel left behind. FOMO.
Wow, Happy. What you shared today is really scary. It's frightening to think how inflation can create such a huge wealth gap.
The government has to follow policies that encourage inflation. So I hope you practice asset allocation to avoid FOMO. Also, do not forget that stocks are the best way to hedge against inflation.